In some of the movement that we've seen.
Thousands of ambulance workers across 5 areas in England are striking on Friday next week. They're members of Unison and it's part of the union's dispute over pay and staffing. Environment Agency staff will walk out next Wednesday. And families with young children could enjoy quicker journeys through airports this summer. A trial allowing 10 and 11-year-olds to use e-gates is taking place at Heathrow, Gatwick and Stansted. If it's a success, it could be rolled out across the country. In the city, a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was trading down 16 points at 77.68. The pound buys $1.23 and €1.13. LBC weather, heavy showers and long spells of rain in the north tonight, remaining dry in the south with clearer skies, lows of 2. More rain tomorrow for northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland. Drier in the south with bright spells, but turning cloudier in the afternoon, highs of 10 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Tom Swarbrick.
Just gone 4. Hello, afternoon, welcome to the show. Tom Swarbrick at Drive here on LBC. Hope we find you very well indeed. This afternoon,
we have completed the biggest trade deal yet. We've taken back control of our laws and our destiny.
was it really only 3 years ago that Brexit was made flesh? There's a poll for Unheard suggesting only 3 regions of the UK that now don't regret voting to leave, and all 3 of them are in Lincolnshire. What is your regret specifically over? We'll discuss. Plus, in completely unrelated news,
the economy will contract by 0.6% this year. That's not out of line with the length of recession that the Bank of England, for instance, has forecast.
the UK will have poorer economic performance next year than any other developed nation, according to the IMF, including the apparently crippled economy of Russia. Details to come.
Call 0345 60 60 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Tom Swarbrick on LBC.
Very good afternoon to you. We'll spend the next hour of the programme looking at the past. We're going to, on this hour, look more at the future. So before you all shout at me that I'm ignoring Brexit, I'm not. We'll talk about it. But I want to start by talking about something that this nation is actually quite good at. You might think it's grasping at straws with what the IMF has said today about the UK economy, but I'm going to clutch at straws and find something that we are good at. We are really good at wind. Offshore, onshore, from Windermere to Swindon, we're good at wind. We have the 6th largest capacity of any country, with wind power generating about 25% of UK electricity, having surpassed coal in 2016 and nuclear in 2080. That's a good news story. And part of the march to net zero, Britain becoming the first nation to put that target into law. So we are moving in the right direction. There are fantastic commercial and technological opportunities from net zero, and there is clearly the political will to try and galvanise everyone for that. It's far from perfect, but we are doing okay. However, I just want to draw your attention to some of the nascent plans to build on that good work. We know we'll have to make changes to reach net zero, but I still think there is a question around consent for those changes. Do you agree to do something to help, you're told, in getting to net zero? So I just wanted to put this under your nose to see how it smells. A report for government about getting to net zero suggests mandating by 2033 that all homes sold have to have an EPC rating of C. That in order to sell your home, certainly, I don't know, without any additional costs maybe, you would have to have made the necessary changes to get your property's energy efficiency level up to a C first. Are you happy with that? Are you happy to potentially, because the government hasn't agreed to these recommendations yet, but would you be happy to be told that in order to sell your home, you had to have done the double glazing or put the loft insulation in? Is that a reasonable contribution to ask you to make to net zero? 0345 6060 973. If you live in an old house, if you live in a drafty house, can you afford to put those changes in? Can you afford the double glazing? Can you afford to roll out the soft matting that looks like sheep's wool that's been dyed yellow in your loft? Because my view would be, I am happy to have my house get an EPC rating of C, but if the government's telling me I have to, then they're the ones who can pay for it. Would you consider that to be a reasonable trade-off? Jeremy Hunt announced £6.6 billion to be spent on insulating homes. If some of that money went to insulating your home, to get it up to a band C, to mean that one day you could actually sell it, would that be a reasonable outcome? Or do you think the idea of the government setting in law, mandating that the only way in which you would be able to sell your own home is if it had an EPC rating up to a certain standard? 0345 6060 973. Simon Wilkinson is Board Director of Property Mark and founder of the Wilkinson Partnership Estate Agents. Thanks for coming on the programme, Simon. This hasn't been, it's been recommended to the government, but it certainly hasn't been accepted. What do you make of the idea?
Well, I think the idea is pushing us to the green agenda, and I've got no problem with that. It just simply makes sense that we should all be living in houses that are cheaper to run and more energy efficient. The challenge, though, of course, is how you get the historic housing stock in the UK up to a C or better. And that's a huge challenge, because we're talking about potentially 15 million houses having to be, thoroughly insulated. What we do know is that some of the research that has looked at how you get, for example, a Victorian house to a C level means that you've got to really strip the house out internally, insulate the walls, insulate the floors, take the ceilings down, insulate the voids, and you're talking about £50,000.
No way, hang on. 50
because
grand?
You've got to take off the radiators, you've got to take off the electrical sockets, you've got to refit the whole thing. So this is a big issue potentially.
Well, I mean, not just potentially, it's clearly a big issue if a lot of the current housing stock have poor energy standards. But as you say, the scale of the challenge to get them up to a C is going to mean what? Those people find the money? Or do you think maybe this is what that government announcement of funding for insulation should go towards?
Well, I think that's where the debate sits today, is who is going to pay. Now, of course, the savvy buyers are already buying houses that are a C or better. We've seen a quantum shift in buyer demand over the cost of living crisis, where people are really searching out, and we hear from members all over the UK that buyers generally are looking for a C or better already. So there's definitely a quantum shift. And if you're a homeowner, you have got time, a decade or so, to get your house in order, forgive the pun, to start to get your insulation done. So there is time to do these things, but it is a question of being aware of it and understanding what it actually is you need to do to get yours to a level C. If people leave it till the last minute, potentially, you wonder about supply chain issues to get insulation, the right installers to do these things. New boilers as well are a factor in this, and moving over to air source heat pumps, as indeed is happening all new homes in a couple of years. Yeah,
there are quite a few recommendations about properties in this, given that clearly that's a big part of how we're going to get to net zero. The government, the review asks for government to bring forward all consultations and work to mandate the future home standard by 2025. Do you happen to know what that is?
Well, what we haven't seen yet is actually what the specification is going to be, other than knowing that it needs to be a C or better.
Right.
But there are already some incentives out there for buyers. So, for example, quite a lot of mortgage lenders now will give you a discount on your mortgage, on the life of your mortgage, of say 0.25%, if the energy efficiency rating is better. So there is a correlation there. And I think the whole market needs to be working collectively together with government, but it would be good to see government, incentivizing this now, and getting the economy going when it comes to having our housing stock better insulated.
And just finally, you mentioned 15 million homes that have a lower standard than C, or certainly need upgrading on their EPC. Is there a specific type of home? I mean, is it all shapes and sizes? From the small terraced Victorian house to the large Edwardian mansion?
Yeah, basically it's it's the national housing stock. We've really only been building new homes to a C or better in the last 10 years at best. There are some incredibly well insulated houses out there, but again, the UK is way behind Europe in the way we're building houses. In the European scene, for example, most houses now are built actually in a factory and then delivered to site, assembled, and all done in the warm and dry, and really very energy efficient. We've got to get a move on in this country, start to look forward, but we're crippled also by the housing agenda generally. So there's a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah, isn't there just? And not a lot of time to do it in. Simon, good to talk to you. Really appreciate it. Simon Wilkinson, Board Director of Property Mark, founder of the Wilkinson Partnership Estate Agents. 0345 6060 973, the number. Here's Paul in Ramsgate on this. Paul, helpfully, you're an EPC